Hello and welcome back to another episode of the It's Not Orange podcast as our attention turns to Saturday's away trip against Stockport County as Blackpool's manager hunt continues. Stephen Dobbie will hopefully get Blackpool season back on track. And today we're going to be previewing that with Hannah, who's a regular guest on the podcast by now. I think this must be at least a hat trick by this point. How are you doing?
At least.
How are you? All right?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really enjoying the weather at the moment, but other than that, the football's variable.
Was that bearable?
Yeah, it is actually bearable, but it's also very variable.
Yeah, well, I wish our season was variable, but it's quite consistently crap at the moment. So we've got the excitement. I find this really weird, but as a football fan, I'm not sure if you find the same because you have had Chally for a while, but when you're looking for a new manager, it's kind of exciting in some ways, but obviously it's usually for the wrong reasons while you're looking for one.
Yeah, so Chally is the manager who gets linked with all sorts. So often, like any vacancy in the Championship, Chally is normally fairly high up the betting odds, but also it's the complete conviction that people will tell. So he was absolutely signed terms at Sheffield United the other week. It was all done. He was taking his entire coaching staff. We were getting 3.5 million in compensation. It was absolutely a done deal. And then Chris Wilder was announced. And it's that journey that you go on, isn't it? So, right, like, okay, at the time we'd had a little bit of a bad run. Chally is he's very bullish. He's not everyone's cup of tea. And we have had softer managers in the past, and some people kind of yearn for that a little bit. But yeah, then you start like, right, well, who are we going to get? And we've got Mark Stott, who, for anyone who was interested in Stockport County at all, he did an interview with the Hard Truth podcast with Darren McAntony and Phil Iverson last week, talking about his background and the investment that he's put into Stockport County. And we are criticised quite heavily for having ridiculous pockets of money, which we don't necessarily have. He's a businessman. He's very sensible with his money, and there are limits. But he has a very strong network of people that he has acquired through business. So it's always who are we going to get that is already known to Mark Stott. Wayne Rooney gets mentioned frequently because they live close to each other and kind of move in the same circles. So it's that side of things that, like how much influence is he going to have in the next appointment versus because he wasn't necessarily a massive proponent of Chally when he signed. So he doesn't generally get involved with a lot of that side of things. It's very much the business and operations. You'll have him to thank for the roof. I'd say roof and not pillars.
Yes.
The one thing I would say, so I hated it at Barrow. I don't know if you ever been to Barrow.
Yeah.
A similar structure looking at it, but it's worse because it's side on. So you're following the game and there's a bit and it's ridiculous. It's like ours looks like it's going to be, quite honestly, which is horrific. But looking down the pitch, I don't think it'll be as bad. She says, having no. It'll be months before I could even see it for myself, but I'm sure there'll be pictures. It looks awful, and I apologise in advance. And we've all
it's not your decision, but maybe they'll do half-price tickets for restricted view.
I know, but like every when I go on opposition podcasts, I'm like, oh yeah, we've got amazing pies. Now the pies are shit, and you're going to have a restricted view, but you'll probably win because all the stats say you shouldn't.
Well, there is that. We'll come on to the game, but I want to quickly turn our attentions, if I may, to last season. Not that I want to remind you, but obviously heartbreak in the playoffs as a loss to Richie Wellens' Leyton Orient, but a successful season nonetheless, even though it fell in defeat. How are you feeling after last season? Was it a bit mixture of emotions, where it be gutted and proud, or was it a case of you should have got the job done?
Last season always felt a massive free hit. It was, I remember this time last year and being like the Bradford, or I mean, not to the same degree, but being like the Bradford fans are, just happy to be coming away from games, not getting battered. I never really got to this is achievable point. I was always very much in that, actually, I think we need a consolidation year, to use the cliche, but I don't think it was the right time for us to go up. Seeing the amount that Wrexham and Charlton were spending over the summer. I mean, to go back to Mark's start, he's put in, I can't remember, it's 25 or 29 million. We would have had to have spent that again over the summer in fees. We're actually operating at the moment on a smaller wage bill than we had last year. We've got rid of Fraser Horsfall, you see, so not got that over our heads.
I don't know if it's any good. I'm yet to see him play properly.
So I think I was really pleased. Again, another cliche is the kind of swings and roundabouts of various refereeing decisions over the course of the season, not least the Charlie. I mean, you texted me during that game, the Charlie Kelman goal. Yeah. There was, we'd had the Wrexham away game a couple of weeks before, which was similarly controversial. And, I do think that every team goes through that, and it probably does even out over the season. So ultimately, really pleased how we did. Even going into that playoff semi-final, I wouldn't say I'm negative. I think I'm realistic, and I also manage my own expectations. I've, seen us go through so much, and, we are not good in playoffs like that. I mean, we got to the final a couple of years ago in League Two, but we didn't go up. I've seen us win once in playoffs. I'm not sure in my lifetime, but certainly since I've been a county fan in the early 90s. So, playoffs, I'm ambivalent about. The one thing I would say, which is the kind of the really high bar for this season, is that every year for the last 12 years, we're the only club in the world to do it. We've finished higher than our previous season's position. So that means I did a season preview for 4-4-2, and they're like, where are you going to finish? Second. And
follow tradition, yeah.
Yeah, but you can't. I think this season already is showing that we have had a tough start, and I know we'll get to this, but already it feels like, and I knew this at the end of last season, that as little hope as I had for being promoted last season, and as much as I didn't want it, I was very much of this might be our chance. You don't know what's going to happen next year. At the time, we didn't know who was coming down, who was coming up, and it did feel a little bit like, gosh, if we can do it, it would be better. I do suspect that we probably would have boomeranged. Whether Mark would have let that happen, I don't know. So yeah, I don't think I was massively disappointed. I was one of the top, if we finished in the top 10, that would be brilliant. I was perfectly happy with that. I'm not overly ambitious generally, because it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah, well, it was the hope that's already killed me this season. Under Bruce and the transfer window we had, naturally thought we'd be potentially where you are, but football is a funny old game. But just quickly on Challoner, you've already spoken about him already, but in true Alan Partridge style, bouncing back for those Alan Partridge fans out there. But he's a man of quite high resilience, and like you say, he exceeds himself most years, if not every year, of course, as history dictates. So talk to me about Challoner bouncing back in your start of this season, because obviously two defeats in 11, slightly stronger away from home, which we'll come on to in a second, but it's been pretty consistent despite the inconsistent results. You're obviously there or thereabouts without being too in form, which is, potentially great news for Stockport.
Yeah, we're already kind of injury ridden to some degree as well. Charlie is one of those managers who is very straight talking. I I've done lots of work in my kind of day job on like management theory and leadership theory and all of that, and as an employee he would terrify me. He is old school. I imagine, you know, proper like Alex Ferguson hairdryer treatment. But I would also say that, you know, we've had a lot of players that have come, well, not a lot, but we've had players that have come back to us on loan that have signed permanently. So Louis Barry came back a couple of times, Brad Hills has come back, Tyler Onyango. So it's obviously a personality and a management style that does work for players. It's not you know, there were questions, you know, when we're talking about Sheffield United, that he'd lost the dressing room and they were starting to revolt. In the past, he used to do it a lot more than he does now, but he would name players that he was particularly disappointed in their performance. He made a really, really veiled reference to a player who'd lost concentration in a particular game and mentioned that he'd done the same in the Leyton Orient semi-final, which for me, I just find really, really unhelpful, because it kind of sets the fan base against them as well. Yeah. And they become a little bit of a scapegoat. So I don't necessarily agree with everything that he does. He didn't name the player, but, you know, you can work it out. Yeah. We had people like going back through the videos to see like who had made a mistake that had led to a goal against Orient, and then matching it up, like absolutely ridiculous. But he, you know, he has a lot of respect as a former player. He is clearly, you know, he gets very, very involved in recruitment. He's very exacting and demanding, and a lot of his criticism of players often is that they're not kind of they're not following instructions. They're, you know, he's very strategic. He's very kind of tactic driven, and so that's where his criticism lies. Some of his most complimentary post matches this season have been when they've lost or drawn, because they've done what he wanted them to do and couldn't do anymore, which is fair as well. So yeah, I think, you know, and you know, as we said, it's that question like, well, if not him, who else? And he has never finished lower than playoffs in his managerial career. He is, you know, very, very committed, but very, very passionate, properly laid into the Huddersfield fans after the game on Saturday. I often think he's more like the dad of the team, and I think that like he's very protective of the players, and sometimes I think he puts himself in the firing line to shield them a little bit. When we were in Pinatar in the summer, he was like telling them off for splashing us and things like that, like, you know, like you would with your kids. And I think that comes into it a lot, that he is very protective of them.
I like that in a manager, because you need a leader, and he may not. He's certainly adaptable, like you call him old school and stuff. But if he's bettering himself, is obviously detailed, and you know, and his players, like you say, come back. So for me, he's, I say, an elite manager, but obviously we're talking, you know, Premier League, Champions League, etc. But in terms of EFL, for me, and if he continues to be in this vein of form, he'll be an elite manager that probably deserves a lot more recognition than he gets personally, because for someone that betters themselves every single year, it takes high mentality and attention to detail, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, the start of this season, then you've had some decent results. Obviously, beating Huddersfield away. You've had some difficult games like Bradford at home, etc. But it seems like it's stop-start somewhat, whereas ours have been very much stopped this season. To talk to us about the start of your season, specifically this year around, and whether you've been sort of stronger away potentially. It's negligible in terms of,
and I think it's down to we've actually just played one more away game.
Yeah, sure.
So otherwise it's exactly the same. And you know, traditionally we have been stronger away sometimes. What we were last year, which we're not this year, is we were very, very strong in second halves last year, and I would, you know, get to half time and be like, right, can't, you know, just like let's hold on, and then they're going to come out a different team in the second half. And if anything, this season we've seen the reverse. So that Bradford game, the best I have seen us play for years in that first half. It was like it was just the performance of dreams. And then to watch them hemorrhage it so convincingly and so completely, it's the angriest I have come away from a game since the season that we came out of the National League. And I was absolutely furious. And I was walking out with Liam, who done podcasts with over the years, who's a Bradford fan, and he was arguing with my 12-year-old daughter, and I was just letting them go at it, and I just couldn't end it. I was just furious. And I think that has been the frustration, that we know that we've got that level of performance in us. So the Plymouth game, which was not Plymouth was a bad example, Cardiff, it was the 97th minute equalizer. It, again, a really, really good performance, but a defensive goalkeeping lapse of concentration took the 3 points away from us. We've had, so the things that have changed since the beginning of the season, we've got injuries. So Lewis Bates out. We've got a player called Arttu Hoskonen, who is a Finnish international, picked up an injury on his very, very first day of training at Carrington, hasn't been seen.
Didn't Connolly do that last season as well?
Yeah, his was the sprinkler in Pinnerton.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
We didn't have that this year. But yeah, very similar. Lewis Bates out until January. Owen Dodgson's out. He's on loan from Burnley, I think. Yeah. But we also had we had 2 record signings. And, for people who talk about our ridiculous budgets and pockets, our record signing was £1 million. That's what we're working with. So that was Malik Mothersill, who came from Peterborough. Brad Hills came from Norwich. He was on loan with us last season. He's the Fraser Horsfall replacement, essentially. But he joined right at the tail end of the transfer window. So there are relatively, they're not young, they're kind of pretty much on par for the league at average is about 27. We've got Ollie Norwood, who's bringing the age up, as is Ben Osborne, who's been a great addition. But my point is, we're still not properly clicked. And what Charlie does is, if we win, he keeps the same team. So Fan Hub and your predictions becomes a dream. Everyone's getting the mystery pack. When we're drawing and losing, he will mix it up. And so what you don't get is that a kind of natural flow that comes from a team that are playing together week in, week out. So we've had
to win 10 in a row, right?
Well, so we're 2 wins in a row now, but so we've got Tyler Onyango out on Saturday because he was sent off last weekend for 2 yellows. And Benno, who is our Icelandic teenager, is on international duty. So there will be changes this week. But very erratic, weird, kind of conflicting performances between the first half and the second half. We had change of goalkeeper after I want to say the Cardiff game, actually, but I'm not entirely sure whether it was. So Ben Hinchliffe is back in. And so lots of tweaking around the edges and not feeling particularly settled as a squad. That's been the first, however, are we on 11 games now?
11, yeah.
Games, yeah. So one loss home, 1 loss away, and then draws and wins otherwise. So it's, we've not had as poor a start as County fans would lead you to believe.
It's a pretty solid start, as the season goes, like you say, without being too sensational.
No, and it's we're now ahead of where we were this time last season. Exactly. Now the difference is that your Bradfords, Lincoln, Stevenages are dropping fewer points than the teams that were at the top of the league this time last year had. So Birmingham was still finding their feet. Wycombe were doing a lot better. Wrexham were kind of around where we were. So that, I think that's the biggest difference in terms of the table. But in terms of points, we're ahead of where we were this time last year.
And I'd like to say in true style, well, I'll eat my hat. I don't think Stevenage and others will keep it consistent for as long because they haven't got big squads and stuff. So
one of the things that I want to do is look at the teams that they've played and where where we would expect those to be at the end of the season, because we've had quite, we don't do well against Bradford. We don't. Huddersfield, same with you. Like at the beginning of the season, it was Blackpool and Huddersfield that had recruited really strongly, and we expected to do well. Plymouth, Cardiff, again, Plymouth didn't have the greatest start, but it was really tough watching them kind of arguably over celebrate against us. But they were desperate for the win.
They were, yeah.
So yeah, we've not had the easiest start, I don't think. Reading as well. Everyone kind of writes off Reading a little bit because of their recent history, but as a team, they were
when they
really
click, they can be amazing.
Well organised. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about two things at once here. So key players so far and how you set up differently potentially this season, or has Charlie kept it quite the same? So I know you've got a few players out which are key, but who going into Saturday is going to be sort of your main hopefully performance makers for Stockport?
Everything goes through Ollie Norwood. So he's sitting in midfield, but has the ability to kind of fall back if needed. And he is, I've got a Huddle Stats Bomb subscription, and I'm obsessed with passing networks. And he is like this big red circle in the middle of the pitch, which is it gets bigger the number of passes, and it gets redder the higher the influence on XG and XG chain. And he's also king of the set pieces. So we are slightly less reliant on set pieces this season than some teams. But again, I think I don't know who I did it for, but I was asked at the beginning of the season, right, who takes your corners from the left side and the right side? Ollie Norwood. Who takes your indirect free kicks? Ollie Norwood. Like penalties? Ollie Norwood. Everything. And he terrifies me because I do feel like so much of our gameplay goes through him, that if he was injured, and he's mid-30s arguably, it really
he's in his prime, arguably mid-30s.
Well, he's a young gun for some of us, Tom. But yeah, so he worries me. And Ben Osborne we're struggling with wing backs, and that we never traditionally played with them, and it's not really clicking. But Ben Osborne coming in has helped. So obviously he played with Ollie at Sheffield United. Up front, it would be remiss of me not to mention Kyle Wootton, who is currently top of, well, actually, I think he is anyway, still is, fairly sure he is, top of the goal scorers table for League One and assists. So he has been a player that is very quietly delivering, and he gets an awful lot of stick from county fans for not being a 25 goal a season striker. Like there is he gets absolutely unfair criticism from our fans, and this season it just seems to be him who's on the end of everything. I think that's largely because there isn't a Louis Barry. Benoni Anderson, who I mentioned, is one of those perfect strikers. So his XG is ridiculously high, but he's not scoring. He's doing everything, but he's just not. And he's supposedly, Charlie described him as our best finisher towards the end of last season. He's just not finishing. Jack Diamond is doing incredibly well. Had a really kind of fractured start to last season. Obviously, a lot going on with him off the pitch, and it was his first time back for a while, and he clicked at the end of last season as well, and has kind of continued that form. But again, finishing is the issue, and I think you'll see that on Saturday. We have a lot of chances that we're just struggling to convert.
Yeah, I noticed that in the XG tables, but we're still bottom of that as well. So I don't think you have too much to worry about. So, new manager though, so hopefully a bit of freedom going into Saturday. But, couple of last questions then. We've talked about obviously some of your players being out. I think we've got 6 or 7 out, including the likes of Ennis as well. So we're missing quite a bit up front in terms of character and adaptability. So I'd be interested to see how we set up against you on Saturday, especially with Dobbie taking the reins. But where have your strengths been so far this season? Where do you think you can hurt us on Saturday?
We are playing with an awful lot of pressure. Nearly every team that we play against, and the difference from, say, Rotherham to Reading to Huddersfield, was that that pressure was kind of converting into regains. So that's where we've been strong. We're not playing with the majority of possession, but that seems to suit us. And I think, if you look at the stats over the last 6 months, essentially, the matches that the outcomes have been better are when we've had the minority of the possession. So I'm not that concerned about that. Generally, though, it's like you say, looking at all the kind of stats tables, we're not brilliant. You look at Huddersfield, for example. So we played Top Trumps on the podcast on Sunday night with Blackpool's results, as in XG concede, all sorts of different kind of metrics, and Stockport's. And this is what I said to you, we came out not massively higher, but higher in all of them. So I was like, well, we're inevitably going to lose now. But Huddersfield were all higher than ours. So it doesn't mean anything really. But I think it is what it is. Take every game as it comes.
Yeah, I think when you've got a manager that knows how to win, you're never going to be spectacular. But at the same time, you know, a bit like Wooten up front, you want to see maybe a Haaland, but they're getting Wooten. His outputs are brilliant, and I would, crave a striker like that, especially as a man. So, you only miss, you only miss what you've got when it's gone.
Yeah,
and I think if he was gone, I think obviously you'd be potentially sort of lower to mid-table. So, last question: where can Blackpool have success against Stockport? Like I said, if Bruce was in charge, I already would give you the 3 points, but because Dobbie has, on the back of Dobbie's last sort of reign as caretaker, I don't know if you have a bounce naturally. He's not officially the manager.
No.
But he beat the likes of Norwich away when we got relegated in the Championship, but also we literally, when Luton went up to the Premier League, we absolutely played him off the park for sort of 45 minutes until we conceded some poor goals in the Championship. So he knows how to play, in my opinion. He's much more of an attacking threat than obviously Bruce ever was, but he may have changed over the last couple of years as being the first team manager. But I don't know what we're going to set up like. I don't know how he's going to set up against you, of course. So that's the mystery for Blackpool fans, and of course Charlie as well. But where have you found teams have had the most success against you? Nowhere.
Well, so
probably not a common thing. Maybe odd chances.
Coria Dye. So Coria Dye, who was our kind of first choice goalkeeper going into the season, really struggles with crosses into the box, and we really struggled to defend against set pieces. So when we allow, and Charlie's talked about this in the past, when we allow teams to play the way they want to play, that's when we struggle. And that's what happened with Bradford. So what Graham Alexander did which is apparently very, very unusual for him, as he made a ton of substitutions at half time. He doesn't do that. He's one that kind of ekes it out to 70 and then like, okay, may as well. He made changes quickly and forced us to play. And we've got 4 ex-county players at Bradford at the moment. So, you know, obviously kind of very familiar with the setup and with Charlie's approach. But they just forced us to play differently. We don't have a Louis Barry this season, who needs like two men on him at all times. If there's some way to control Ollie Norwood, then that stops us in our tracks, because he's so integral.
I'm hoping
honestly,
Jordan Brown
really
can
variable.
I'm hoping Jordan Brown starts centrally, who was Orient's sort of workhorse last season, to try and be competitive in midfield. So
we've struggled with aerials, but that kind of clicked last weekend as well. So I honestly
couldn't put your finger on that.
It depends who shows up from our side as well. And like I said, Tyler Onyango's out and Benno's out, so we're going to see some changes. Corey O'Keefe, who is likely to come in for Onyango, wasn't great against Salford on Tuesday night. We lost 3-1 to Salford.
I did watch the game. It was not.
I forgot. Yeah,
it was not great. It was a hard watch as well, because I think Salford, they're not very. They've got the odd flair player, but they're hard.
We're not. We're also, like, you know, and you look at that kind of defensive radar, not at all aggressive.
Yeah,
just not at all. So yeah, we struggle with kind of really kind of aggressive and physical teams, and that's where you win, I think, actually.
If we're not a aggressive side, or we weren't under Bruce.
Get them on their like energy drinks before.
We need something after Wimbledon. It was the worst performance I've seen for years. So the players speaking to the chairman, I think, more so than any others. But that's the end of my questions. Hannah, have you got any questions for us before we?
No. Enjoy the in the absence of a pie recommendation, I will recommend Levish Shawarma on Castle Street. The absolute best kebab.
Nice.
They do like a samoon, which my daughter calls a shazoom, which tastes like health food, but like it's absolutely incredible.
Lovely.
So that's my
recommendation on X for you. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking a break from your work to give us on Stockport.
Thank you.
We'll be back to review this game and hopefully at least a point for the Seasiders as we look to get our season back on track. But for now, thanks for listening.